My dear viewers, tonight's story is one I did not write myself. It was sent to me by one of our own viewers, a woman from the northern countryside who asked me to share it with you. She said, "Grandma, I don't know if anyone will believe me, but every word of this is true." Before I begin, my loves, please remember to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with your friends and family. Your support helps this little storytelling corner stay alive. And if you have a story, a real one, or one whispered through generations, you can always share it with me in the comments. Now, sit with me. Let me tell you about the night she survived completely alone in a house miles away from another living soul. She wrote, "Dear Grandma, I grew up on the cold, windy plains of Montana. Back then, our nearest neighbor lived almost 2 miles away, and during deep winter, the world felt like an empty white desert. I was only 19 when this happened, young, stubborn, and convinced nothing could scare me." Her parents had left for the weekend to attend a funeral in another town. The house was a small wooden cabin, old but strong, surrounded by endless fields, tall fences, and the quiet that only winter can bring. "I remember," she said, "the stillness of that night, the kind of quiet where you can hear your heart beat, the kind where even the wind seems afraid to move. But as evening settled, something changed. First came the dog. Their family dog, Ranger, a big brown shepherd mix, rarely barked. He was calm, steady, loyal. But that night, he paced nonstop, walking circles around the living room, staring at the windows as if something outside was watching. I told myself it was nothing, just the cold, just the dark, just my imagination getting loud. But Ranger wouldn't calm down. He growled, deep, low, and dangerous, facing the back door. And then, around 10 p.m., the power flickered. Once, twice, then died completely. Outside, the wind began to howl like a living thing. She was alone, miles away from any help. And something or someone was out there. She lit a lantern, her hand shaking. And that's when she heard it. A slow, dragging sound across the snow, circling the house. Not footsteps, a drag, a pull, a scrape. Ranger pressed himself against her leg, trembling. Something was moving in the dark. Something that did not walk like a person. Something that did not breathe like an animal. She whispered to herself, "I should have gone with my parents." The young woman wrote, "Grandma, the sound outside didn't stop. It moved slowly, deliberately, circling the entire house. Ranger stood stiff, growling so deep it sounded like it came from his bones. She tried to calm him, but the dog's eyes weren't on her. They were locked on the back door. The thin wooden door her father always said he needed to replace, but never did. It rattled softly as the wind pressed against it. But the sound outside, that dragging, pulling noise, it wasn't the wind. She picked up her lantern and walked toward the back door, her breath shaking. Her boots made soft thuds on the old wooden floor. Ranger followed, growling with each step. She placed her hand on the door, and the entire house fell silent. No wind, no dragging, no movement, just stillness. And then, knock. A single, sharp, deliberate knock on the door. She froze. Ranger exploded into frantic barking, throwing himself at the wood. Another knock, then another. But something was wrong. Something her mind noticed before she could make sense of it. The knocks were too low. Not at human height. They came from the bottom half of the door, down by the floor. Very slowly, she knelt, her face level with the doorknob, lantern trembling in her grip. She leaned closer to the door. Ranger snarled, placing himself between her and whatever was on the other side. And then, just beneath the crack at the bottom of the door, she saw something move. A shadow, long, thin, and shifting. She whispered through the wood, "Hello? Is someone out there? Are you hurt?" No answer, just the sound of breathing, slow, wet, uneven. Not the breathing of a man, not the snorting of an animal. Something in between. A whisper slipped through the crack. Cold. She stumbled back, dropping the lantern. The light rolled across the floor, throwing wild shadows on the walls. Ranger barked and barked, body tense, fur raised. And then, just as suddenly as it had begun, the knocking stopped. But she wasn't relieved, because the next sound came from the other side of the house, the front porch. Boot steps, slow, heavy, measured. Someone or something had moved from the back door to the front in seconds, without leaving footprints, without crossing the snow she had seen untouched just minutes earlier. She whispered, "God help me! I'm not alone out here." She wrote, "Grandma, when those heavy steps reached the front porch, I knew instantly that whatever was outside wasn't human. No person moves that fast through waist-deep snow. No person knocks at knee level. No person breathes like that." Ranger's barking stopped all at once, not because he calmed down, but because he went silent from fear. The kind of fear animals feel when a predator is near. He pressed himself flat against the floor, tail tucked, teeth showing. His eyes didn't move from the front of the house. Then, tap. A soft tap on the living room window. Not a knock this time. A gentle tap, like the tip of a finger against glass. Tap, tap, tap. She held her breath, staring at the window across the room. The lantern's flame flickered, throwing long shadows against the walls. Another tap. Slow, patient, as if whatever was out there knew she was watching and enjoyed it. She forced herself to stand, even though her knees felt like they were filled with water. Each step toward the window felt heavier than the last. She wrote, "I don't know what possessed me. I think I needed to prove to myself that I wasn't going insane." She lifted the lantern higher. The tapping stopped. The glass fogged over from the outside, as if something was breathing against it. Long streaks appeared, sliding down the window panes, like wet fingertips dragging through condensation. Her voice cracked as she whispered, "Who's there?" No answer. Then slowly, a shape pressed against the glass. Not a face, not fully, just the hint of one. A dark outline of a head, but stretched wrong. Too narrow, too long, with one large gleaming eye reflecting the lantern's flame. The eye didn't blink. It didn't look away. It stared straight at her. She stumbled back, nearly dropping the lantern again. Ranger leapt forward, barking like mad, but the thing didn't flinch. It stayed there, unmoving, as if studying her. And then it shifted, rising higher, 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 far taller than any person should be. Its outline sharpened, revealing long limbs bent at unnatural angles. Her breath froze. She whispered, "Please, please go away." The thing lowered itself again until that single eye was level with hers. And it smiled. Not with lips, not with teeth, but with the slow widening of that eye, a look of terrible delight. Then, a deafening bang slammed against the glass. The whole window shook. The lantern flame snapped violently, and in the sudden wave of darkness, she heard it speak, a voice not outside anymore, but right up against the window frame. "Let me in," she wrote. "Grandma," after that voice whispered through the glass, I couldn't breathe. My whole body went cold, like the fear had drained every drop of warmth from my blood. Ranger growled so fiercely his whole body shook, teeth bared toward the window. But the thing outside didn't break the glass. It didn't try to force its way in. It simply stood there, almost entertained, as if enjoying the terror it was causing. And then, as suddenly as it had appeared, it was gone. One blink, and the entire window was empty. No eye, no shape, nothing. But the fear stayed. She backed into the middle of the living room, clutching the lantern so tightly her fingers turned white. That's when something even stranger happened. The old rotary phone on the wall, the one that only worked when the house had electricity, began to ring. Not once, not a glitch, not a dying buzz. A full, clear, sharp ring. In a house without power. In a storm that had killed every line in the area. She wrote, "Grandma, I froze. Phones don't ring when the lines are down. Phones don't ring when the power is out. Phones don't ring when something is stalking outside your house." Ranger whimpered and backed away, as if the very sound hurt him. The phone rang again. Ring! Her heart hammered, but something inside her whispered, "Don't answer it." She stepped back, but the phone kept ringing. Relentless, shrill, demanding. Finally, unable to bear it, she reached out with a trembling hand and lifted the receiver. The moment she placed it against the ear, the ringing stopped. Total silence. She whispered, "Hello?" Still nothing. Just a faint static, like wind blowing across an empty field. Then, a voice, faint, dragging, just like the sound she heard earlier outside the house. "You shouldn't be alone." She slammed the phone back on the hook. Her legs went weak. She fell to her knees, shaking uncontrollably. "Grandma," she wrote,
I swear on everything I love. The voice wasn't on the phone line. It sounded like it was inside the phone, like it was speaking through something that wasn't alive. She crawled away from the phone as the static continued hissing softly, even though the receiver was hung up. Then came a new sound. Not from the back door, not from the front porch, but from above. The unmistakable creak of footsteps in the attic. She whispered, "No, no, no, no one goes up there. It's locked. There's no way inside." Ranger stared at the ceiling, teeth bared, trembling. The footsteps got louder, slow, heavy, deliberate. Something was inside the house.
Grandma, the footsteps in the attic were the worst sound I've ever heard in my life. It wasn't just walking, it was pacing, back and forth, directly above me. Ranger barked at the ceiling, frantic and terrified. His fur stood straight up, and every deep growl vibrated through the floorboards. But then, in a moment that made her blood turn to ice, the footsteps stopped, all at once. Not gradually, not slowing down, just stopped, like whoever was up there suddenly froze mid-stride. Silence stretched so thin it felt like something would tear. She forced herself to breathe, her lungs tight with fear. She whispered to Ranger, "If something is inside, how did it get in?" There was only one way into the attic, a trapdoor in the hallway ceiling with a chain you had to pull to open it. But she hadn't touched it. Her father hadn't touched it in months. And she knew, absolutely knew, it was locked. Still, something thumped above her head. A single heavy step. Then another. As if whoever, whatever, was in the attic now knew she was listening. Her heart pounded so loud she thought it would echo through the house. She backed away toward the window, gripping the lantern like a lifeline. That's when she noticed something outside. Through the window, she saw the snow-covered yard, white, untouched, peaceful. But in the far distance, beyond the fence line, a figure stood. Tall, thin, completely still, facing the house. She blinked hard, thinking her mind was playing tricks on her. But no, it was there, and it wasn't moving. I thought the thing I saw earlier was at the window. So how could something be standing that far away at the same time? The lantern's flame flickered again, casting a soft glow across the room. The figure in the distance tilted its head. Slowly. Too slowly, like it was studying her from far away. And then, from the attic above her, a whisper. Not through the phone, not through the windows, but directly overhead. "You see me?" She gasped and stumbled back. The lantern nearly slipped from her hand. Ranger barked wildly again, but not at the window, not at the attic. At the trap door in the hallway ceiling. The chain was swaying, moving, even though no air was blowing. She wrote, "Grandma, I think whatever was outside the house and whatever was inside weren't the same thing. She wrote, "Grandma, I knew I had two choices. Either stay frozen in fear or find a way to survive until sunrise." The chain on the attic trapdoor continued to sway, left and right, as if something right above it was pushing gently, testing the barrier. Ranger barked once, sharply, not a frightened bark this time, a warning. The kind animals give when danger is too close. Then thump. Something slammed against the trapdoor from the inside. Dust rained down from the ceiling. The hinges groaned. Thump. Then again, harder. The trapdoor shuddered. If it opened, if whatever was up there came down, there would be nowhere to run. She grabbed the lantern and rushed to the kitchen. Her father kept tools there, old, rusty, but solid. Her shaking hands fumbled through drawers until she found a long screwdriver and an iron skillet. Not much, but better than nothing. Another thump shook the ceiling. Ranger howled, backing away. She knew she had to leave that hallway before the door gave way, but when she ran back toward the living room, she froze. The front door, the heavy wooden one her father built himself, was no longer fully closed. It was open an inch, just enough to show darkness beyond, just enough for cold air to slip through. She whispered, No, I locked it. I locked it twice." Ranger snarled, stepping in front of her. The house felt squeezed from both sides. Danger above her, danger outside, danger slipping through every crack. Then a long, dragging sound scraped across the front porch. That same terrible sound she had heard circling the house earlier. Something was back outside. Something strong enough to push the door open. She slammed the door shut and shoved the kitchen table against it. Her breath came in shallow gasps. Her hands trembled so badly she could barely hold the skillet. The attic thumped again. The door rattled behind the table. She was trapped between two threats. Then suddenly, the footsteps in the attic stopped. Completely. The dragging sound outside stopped. The house fell into absolute, impossible silence. And from the front porch, so close she could hear the breath behind the wood, came the same voice she heard earlier. "Why? Run." She wrote, "Grandma, that voice wasn't angry. It wasn't shouting. It was curious. Like it was confused why I didn't want to let it inside." Then it whispered one more time, a sound that chilled her more than anything that night. "I'm not alone," she wrote. "Grandma, when that voice whispered, 'I'm not alone,' something inside me broke. It wasn't bluffing. It wasn't trying to scare me. It was telling the truth." Ranger whimpered and backed toward her, pressing his body against her legs. The entire house felt like it was breathing, walls creaking, floors shifting, air tightening. Then, footsteps, not from the attic, not from the porch, from multiple places at once. Soft, slow, uneven steps echoed across the snow outside, circling the house, on the roof, crawling from one end to the other, inside the walls, moving like something thin and long, slipping between the beams. She clutched Ranger's collar as he growled in every direction, unable to decide which threat was closest. She wrote, "Grandma, I had never believed in demons or spirits, but that night made me question everything." The attic thumped again. The front door rattled once more against the table, and the roof let out a scraping sound,
as if long fingers dragged across it. She felt herself sinking into panic until she remembered something her father once said. Nothing crosses the threshold unless you open the door for it. She didn't know if that applied to whatever was out there or up there, but she clung to it. So she grabbed the lantern, pulled Ranger close, and moved toward the only room without exterior windows, the pantry. Inside, she barricaded the door using heavy sacks of flour and sat with her back pressed tight against the wood. Ranger lay across her feet, guarding her. The noises continued for hours. Sometimes they were faint. Sometimes they were directly above the pantry ceiling. Once, she swore she heard something sniffing at the crack beneath the door. But she kept repeating just one thing. You can't come in. You can't come in. You can't come in. At some point, exhaustion took over. Her eyes closed for just a moment. When she woke, a dim light glowed beneath the pantry door. Sunlight. Morning. The storm had passed. The silence had returned. But now it felt like normal silence, not the heavy, living kind that had filled the night. She slowly pushed open the pantry door. The house was freezing, but quiet. Ranger ran to the front window, barking at something outside. Her heart pounded as she approached him, and then she saw it. Footprints. Huge, wide, deep in the snow, but not human, not animal. And worst of all, there were two sets. One circling the house, and one leading up to the attic window, the one no one in the family had opened in years. I walked toward the basement door with the bat in my hand, my heart pounding like footsteps behind my ribs. The scraping sound had returned, slow, deliberate, almost playful now. I told myself it had to be the wind pushing something around down there, but deep down, I knew better. The air by the basement door felt colder than the rest of the house, as if something on the other side was sucking all the warmth out of the hallway. I stood there, freezing, holding the doorknob. I didn't want to open it. Every part of my body screamed, "Don't!" But this was the last place anyone or anything could be hiding. If I didn't check it, I'd never sleep again. I twisted the old brass knob slowly. The latch clicked. The door swung inward with a long, aching creak, like it hadn't been opened in decades. The smell hit me first. Damp earth, old wood, something metallic. I flicked on the basement light. The bulb didn't turn on, just perfect. So I raised my phone, turned on the flashlight, and stepped down the stairs one slow, trembling step at a time. The beam shook in my hand as it scanned across dusty shelves, paint cans, a broken rocking horse, and stacks of warped cardboard boxes. Everything looked ordinary and undisturbed, except for the footprints, fresh footprints, leading away from the bottom of the stairs. Bare feet, and they weren't mine. I froze in place, unable to breathe. The prints disappeared behind an old metal shelving unit. I edged forward, bat raised, ready to swing at anything. My heartbeat roared in my ears. My flashlight beam wavered over the shelves, catching something white. A face, but not a whole face, a porcelain mask, cracked down the middle. It lay on the floor, as if someone had been holding it and dropped it when they ran. I knelt down, staring at it. Then I heard it. A quiet exhale right behind me. I spun around, but there was no one there. Only the dark and the cold and the sense that whatever had been down there with me wasn't human. I didn't stay another second. I bolted up the stairs, slammed the door, locked it, shoved a chair under the handle, and didn't sleep until sunrise. And in the morning, the footsteps were gone, the mask was gone, and the basement was spotless, like nothing had ever happened at all.
My dear viewers, now you know the story. The young woman who sent it to me wrote that she never told anyone else. Not her parents, not her friends. She said the experience was so terrifying she thought no one would ever believe her. But she wanted me to share it with you, so you could understand what fear feels like when it's real, when you are alone and nothing in the world is what it seems. I must tell you, my loves, there are nights we walk through life thinking nothing will harm us. There are nights we think we are safe inside our homes. But sometimes something waits. Something watches. And sometimes we are lucky to see the sunrise. I hope you remember one thing from this story. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's standing up even when fear has frozen your bones. Now, my dears, before you go, I have a small request. If you liked this story, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this video with your friends and family. Stories like this grow stronger when shared. And if you have a story, maybe something strange, something scary, or even something heartwarming, please write it in the comments below. I love reading them, and you never know, I might tell your story next. Did this story make your skin crawl? Or did it make you feel grateful for your warm bed tonight? Leave your thoughts in the comments. I love hearing what you think. Remember, children, the night may be dark, the wind may howl, and sometimes we feel completely alone. But even when fear surrounds us, the light always returns. Even in the coldest, loneliest, most terrifying night, sunrise comes. Thank you for listening to this story tonight. Stay warm, stay safe, and remember, some things are better left unseen. But some things, my loves, are meant to be remembered forever. Until next time, I will see you again.